My husband looked me dead in the eyes on the same night I'd been promoted to senior vice president and said, "Let's be honest, Celeste. You're not the woman I married anymore. You've gotten old." I was 44 years old. I had just closed the biggest deal of my career that afternoon, and the man I had loved for 19 years reduced me to a number, my age, while standing in the kitchen I paid for. I didn't cry. I want you to understand that. I did not shed a single tear. Something inside me shifted, not broke, shifted, like a deadbolt sliding into place. I looked at him, at Graham, at this man I had built a life with, and for the first time in almost 2 decades, I saw him clearly. Not as my husband, not as my partner, as a stranger who had just made the worst mistake of his life. But let me take you back, because you need to understand who I was before that night, and who he was, or who I thought he was. I met Graham Ashworth when I was 25. He was 27, working as a junior project manager at a mid-sized construction firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. I was fresh out of my MBA program, drowning in student loans, working 60-hour weeks at a consulting firm downtown. He was charming. God, he was charming. The kind of man who remembered how you took your coffee after meeting you once. He brought me daisies on our 3rd date, not roses, daisies, because I'd mentioned in passing that my grandmother used to grow them. I thought, this man listens, this man pays attention. We got married when I was 27, small ceremony. His parents' backyard in Huntersville, 62 guests. I wore a dress I found at a consignment shop for $280, and I felt like the most beautiful woman alive because of the way he looked at me walking down that aisle. His mother, Vivian, cried. His best man, Todd, gave a speech about how Graham had finally found the one. Everyone clapped. Everyone believed it. I believed it most of all. That's the thing nobody tells you about these stories. The beginning is always beautiful. The beginning is what makes the ending so devastating. Because you spend years replaying those early moments, wondering if any of it was real. Wondering if the man who danced with you barefoot in the grass at your own wedding is the same man who would one day look at you with boredom in his eyes and call you old. For the first 10 years, we were solid. Or at least, I believed we were solid. We bought our first house together, a little 3-bedroom in the Dilworth neighborhood, and I remember painting the guest room on a Sunday afternoon while Graham grilled chicken in the backyard and played music too loud through a Bluetooth speaker. Those are the moments that haunt you, not the fights, the ordinary Sundays. I was climbing the ladder at Hargrove and Callaway, making sacrifices most people wouldn't even consider. I turned down a position in New York because Graham said he didn't want to leave Charlotte. I delayed having children because he wanted to wait until we were financially comfortable. His words, not mine. When I found out at 36 that I had diminished ovarian reserve and that having biological children would be extremely difficult, he held me while I cried and told me it didn't matter, that I was enough. I believed him. I built my entire emotional foundation on that man's words. Meanwhile, I kept working. I brought in 3 of the firm's top 10 clients by the time I was 40. I was billing $750 an hour. I was mentoring junior associates, flying to conferences in Chicago, Boston, San Francisco. I was exhausted, yes. I had gray hairs coming in at my temples. I didn't go to the gym 5 days a week like I used to. I wore reading glasses now. But I was accomplished. I was respected. I was somebody. And Graham? Graham's career had plateaued around year 12. He made decent money, about $95,000 a year, but he'd been passed over for promotions twice. He started coming home bitter, making little comments. Must be nice to travel all the time. I guess one of us has to hold down the fort. At first, I brushed it off. I thought he was just stressed. I made excuses for him the way women are trained to do. Now let me tell you about the night everything changed. April 14th. I will never forget that date. I had just been named Senior Vice President at Hargrove and Callaway. I was one of only 3 women in the firm's history to hold that title. My boss, Richard Callaway himself, 71 years old, took me aside after the announcement and said, "Celeste, you've earned this 10 times over. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." I remember thinking, I can't wait to tell Graham. I stopped at the wine shop on Selwyn Avenue and bought a $90 bottle of Chateauneuf du Pape. I was grinning the whole drive home. I walked through the door at 7:15. Graham was sitting on the couch, watching some sports recap, a beer in his hand. I set the wine on the counter. I said, "Babe, I have incredible news." He barely looked up. "Yeah?" I told him everything. The title, the raise, the corner office, the equity package. He was quiet for about 10 seconds. Then he took a sip of his beer and said, "Good for you. Good for you." Like I'd told him I found a $20 bill in a parking lot. And then, as I was standing there holding that bottle of wine, still in my heels, still buzzing with the pride of 20 years of relentless work, he said it. He put the beer down, looked at me, looked through me, and said, "You know what, Celeste? Let's be honest with each other. You're not the woman I married. You've gotten old. You used to be fun. You used to care about how you looked. Now you're just, I don't know. You're a boss, I guess, but you're not a wife." The room went silent. I could hear the refrigerator humming. I could hear the neighbor's dog barking 2 houses down. I looked at this man who hadn't picked up his own dry cleaning in 8 years, who hadn't planned a date night since 2019, who fell asleep on the couch 4 nights out of 7, and he was telling me I had let myself go. I set the wine bottle down very carefully. I didn't raise my voice. I said, "Graham, I'm going to ask you one time. Is there someone else?" He laughed. He actually laughed. "You're being paranoid," he said. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. Everything has to be drama with you." I didn't push it, not that night. But something told me, something deep in my gut, the same instinct that had guided me through 2 decades of high-stakes negotiations, that he was lying. The next morning, a Saturday, Graham left to meet the guys for golf. He took a shower before leaving, put on cologne, Tom Ford Oud Wood, $87 a bottle, which he never wore for golf, and took his phone into the bathroom with him. When he left, I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee and opened our phone plan online. I have a meticulous mind. It's why I'm good at my job. Within 30 minutes, I had pulled up 6 months of his call and text history. There was a number that appeared over 400 times in 6 months. 400 times. That's more than twice a day, every single day. Texts at 6 in the morning. Texts at midnight. Texts while I was sitting right next to him on the couch watching television. It wasn't anyone in his contacts that I recognized. I cross-referenced it with everyone in our life. His sister, his co-workers, his golf buddies. Nothing matched. I called it from my personal phone. A woman answered, young voice, cheerful. "Hello?" I hung up. My hands were shaking, but my mind was perfectly still. I didn't confront him. And you want to know why? Because I've spent my career watching people make impulsive decisions that cost them everything. I've seen executives blow multi-million-dollar deals because they couldn't keep their emotions in check for 48 hours. Emotion is expensive. Patience is profitable. I decided right then, sitting in my kitchen with cold coffee, that I was going to treat this like the most important case of my career. Methodical, documented, airtight. That Monday, I called Patricia Okafor. Patricia is a divorce attorney in Charlotte who is known, and I mean genuinely feared, in family law circles. She charges $475 an hour, and she is worth every single cent. I told her everything. She said, "Celeste, we're going to handle this. But I need you to do exactly what I tell you for the next 90 days. 90 days, 3 months." I played the role of the oblivious wife for 3 months. I cooked dinner. I asked about his day. I smiled when he kissed me on the forehead before bed. And every single night after he fell asleep, I went downstairs, opened my laptop, and built the case that would end him. Do you have any idea how hard that is? To lie next to someone who is lying to you, and to keep your face perfectly neutral. To watch him text her under the table at dinner and pretend you don't see it. There were nights I wanted to scream. Nights I wanted to throw his phone against the wall and say, I know everything." But Patricia's voice was in my head every single time. 3 months, Celeste. Give me 3 months and I'll give you the rest of your life. So I waited. During those 3 months, I gathered everything. I hired a private investigator named Dennis, ex-FBI, Patricia's recommendation, and he was worth his $12,000 retainer 10 times over. Within 2 weeks, Dennis had photos of Graham entering a condo in the South End neighborhood of Charlotte. A condo that, according to property records, he was renting for $2,400 a month, under a Shell LLC, using money he'd been siphoning from a personal account I didn't even know existed. Her name was Jenna Kowalski. She was 26 years old. She worked as a bartender at a place called the Whiskey Vault on East Boulevard. Dennis pulled her social media. There were pictures of her and Graham at the beach, at restaurants, at a concert in Raleigh. Photos going back 14 months. 14 months this man had been living a double life, and he had the audacity to come home and call me old. But here's the part that made my blood run cold. Dennis found Venmo transactions. Graham had been sending Jenna between $500 and $1,500 a week, every week, for over a year. I did the math. He had spent approximately $63,000 on this woman. $63,000 that should have gone to our mortgage, our retirement, our life. He'd nearly drained his 401k. He'd taken a secret loan against his company's profit-sharing plan. I sat in Patricia's office looking at the spreadsheet Dennis had compiled, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not sadness, not rage. Clarity. Absolute, ice-cold clarity. Patricia drew up the papers. We documented everything. The financial deception, the hidden accounts, the condo lease, the 14 months of infidelity with time-stamped photos and transaction records. North Carolina is one of the few states where you can still sue for alienation of affection. Patricia filed that claim against Jenna Kowalski as well. I wasn't doing it for the money. I was doing it so that every single person involved would know exactly what happened and who did what. I chose the date carefully. June 21st, the longest day of the year. Graham was scheduled to present at his company's quarterly meeting that afternoon. At 11:45 a.m., a process server walked into the conference room at Meridian Construction Group, in front of Graham's boss, his colleagues, and 2 clients he'd been trying to impress for months, and handed him the divorce papers. Patricia told me later that Dennis's contact at the building said Graham's face went completely white. He excused himself, went to the bathroom, and didn't come out for 20 minutes. When he finally did, he called me 17 times. I didn't answer a single one. That evening he came home, well, to the house, because by then I'd already changed the locks, legally, under Patricia's guidance, since the house was in my name, purchased with my down payment, and maintained with my income. He stood on the porch and banged on the door. I opened it. I was calm. I was wearing the silk blouse I'd bought myself when I made partner. I looked him in the eye and I said, "Graham, you told me I was old. You told me I wasn't a wife. But here's what you forgot. I was always the one keeping us afloat. Every mortgage payment, every vacation, every single thing you enjoyed in this life came from my work. You didn't just cheat on me. You stole from me, and now you're going to pay it all back." He started with the script they always use. "Celeste, she means nothing to me. It was a mistake. You're blowing this out of proportion. Can we just sit down and talk about this like adults?" He was pacing back and forth on the porch. His tie was loosened. His face was blotchy. He looked like a man who had been punched in the stomach and was still trying to figure out which direction the fist came from. I let him finish. I let him say every pathetic, rehearsed thing he had to say. And then, very calmly, I said, "Graham, I have 14 months of photos. I have $63,000 in documented transfers. I have the lease to the condo you rented her in South End, the one at 742 Ideal Way, Unit 4B, in case you forgot the address. I have your depleted 401k statements. I have records of the Shell LLC you set up to hide the payments. And right now, as we stand here having this conversation, Jenna Kowalski is being served with an alienation of affection lawsuit at her apartment on Tremont Avenue. So please, Graham, please tell me one more time how I'm blowing things out of proportion." He didn't say a word. Not one word. His jaw literally dropped. He stood there, on the porch of the house I bought, in the cool evening air of a June night, and I watched the exact moment he realized he had lost everything. I watched the arrogance drain from his face like water through a crack in concrete. The man who had called me old. The man who told me I wasn't fun anymore. He looked very small standing on that porch. The divorce took 4 months. Patricia was a surgeon in that courtroom. Graham hired an attorney named Kevin Driscoll. Decent lawyer, mid-range firm, nothing special. He tried to argue that my income, which was roughly 4 times Graham's, should entitle Graham to significant alimony and a 50-50 split of all marital assets. He painted Graham as the supportive husband who sacrificed his own career ambitions so his wife could thrive. I almost laughed out loud. Patricia dismantled that argument in about 45 minutes, presenting the documented financial fraud, the hidden accounts, the secret LLC, the 14 months of Venmo transactions to a 26-year-old bartender. She had Dennis testify. She showed the photos. Graham and Jenna on Wrightsville Beach. Graham and Jenna at a steakhouse in Raleigh. Graham and Jenna at a music festival in Asheville that happened on the same weekend he told me he was visiting his college buddy in Knoxville. The judge, a woman named the Honorable Diane Prescott, 63 years old, 28 years on the bench, looked at Graham over her reading glasses and said she found his conduct egregiously deceptive and financially predatory. Those were her exact words. I will remember them until the day I die. He got nothing. No alimony, no share of the house, no claim on my retirement accounts. He was ordered to repay $31,000 in diverted marital funds, payable within 18 months. The alienation of affection suit against Jenna settled out of court for $45,000. Her parents co-signed the settlement check. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Graham moved into a 1-bedroom apartment near the airport, the kind with thin walls and a parking lot view. I heard through mutual friends that Jenna left him within 3 weeks of the lawsuit being filed. Apparently, being with a married man lost its thrill when it came with a civil judgment and a legal bill she couldn't afford. Let me tell you about my life now. I'm 45. I wake up every morning in a house that is mine, fully mine. I redecorated the bedroom, took down every photo of us, put up artwork I bought at a gallery in Asheville during a weekend trip I took by myself. I have a balcony where I drink my coffee and watch the sunrise over the tree line, and nobody is there to tell me I look tired or that I've changed. I was promoted again 6 months after the divorce. I now oversee the firm's Southeast operations. I manage a team of 42 people. Last quarter, my division generated $18.4 million in revenue. I did that. Me. The woman who was too old. I started working out again, not for anyone else, but for me. I run 3 mornings a week through Freedom Park, watching the sun come up over the lake while my legs carry me forward and my mind goes blissfully quiet. I joined a book club. 12 women, mostly divorced, all fierce, all funny. We drink too much wine and argue about novels, and it is the best night of my month. I took a cooking class in Tuscany last September. Just me and 11 strangers, learning to make fresh pasta and drinking Chianti in a 500-year-old farmhouse on a hillside outside of Siena. I laughed so hard one night that my face hurt the next morning. I had forgotten what that felt like. I had forgotten what it felt like to be light. I went on a date last month. A man named Julian. He's 51, a professor of architecture at UNC Charlotte. He held the door open for me. He asked me about my work and actually listened to the answer. He told me my gray hair was striking. I'm not saying he's the one. I'm not saying I need anyone to be the one, but I'm saying that sitting across from a man who looked at me with genuine admiration after years of being looked through was a kind of healing I didn't know I needed. And Graham? The last I heard, he was asking mutual friends to put in a good word for him, to see if I'd consider talking. My friend Renata called me and said, "He says he made a mistake. He wants to know if there's any chance." I told Renata to tell him exactly this. Celeste is unavailable, permanently. You know what the funniest part is? He never once apologized. Not in the courtroom, not on the porch that night, not through any of the mutual friends who came to me on his behalf. He never once said the words, "I'm sorry." Because men like Graham aren't sorry they did it. They're sorry they got caught. And there is a universe of difference between those two things. Here's what I want every woman watching this to understand. When a man calls you old, when he tells you that you've changed, when he tries to make you feel small, listen carefully. Because he's not describing you. He's describing what he's done to himself. He's telling you that he can't keep up with the woman you've become, so he needs you to shrink. Don't shrink. Don't you dare shrink. I am 45 years old. I am the most powerful I have ever been. I am richer, sharper, calmer, and freer than I was at 25, at 35, at 40. And the man who called me old? He's the one who aged out. He's the one who became irrelevant. Not because of what I did to him, but because of what he did to himself. My name is Celeste, and I am just getting started.